If I should. Something went wrong.
Yeah, sorry. And then it did well. I think we can read and then I told him Five people. You just wait for the amount of people to do it. And then that's for it. And then here we go.
Hello, we will be starting up in about 5 minutes. So please be ready. You can bring your food, that's fine, but we need you to get your attention up here. So in about 5 minutes, we'll start again.
Yeah. We do that as well. There's one element of God together that falls. That's the buyer. And so they let's Yeah. Yeah. Usually say, you have to set up well, so one of the things that we were talking
My time.
Okay, guys. We will have a happy hour at 4 p.m. So we have a pretty nice program before that. And it's pretty tough being the first presenter after break because everyone are just like tired and trying to stay awake and everything. But I can assure you that the presentation that we will now get from Intuitive Surgical will be great. Arun Murizan will present for us. That's great. So you can just set up, please. Make sure everyone gets back in their seats. Okay, so we'll hear about field service mobile app using a Neptune platform from Intuitive Surgical. So give them a big hand.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. So thanks to SAP committee for this opportunity for us to present this mobile application we have built in-house with the help of Neptune platform. And so before we begin our presentation, I'd like to play a small teaser. teaser we launched in January 2018, and the app was launched in worldwide service meeting for all the FEs. So, brief introduction about ourselves. I am Arun Murugesan, Senior Manager for IT Application Development. I manage SAP Web Mobile and QA automation. I have Kondal, Senior SAP Developer who works in OT. We predominantly focus on UI5, Fury, and Web. So this is the agenda. So we'll give a brief introduction about the company and some fact sheet on Neptune, how we do so far, and high-level business process for this field service application. And we'll deep dive into mobile app features and live demo. So who we are? So Intuitive Surgical is market leader in previously robotic surgery. So we sell systems, instruments, integrated table motion, and then we sell a lot of advanced instruments. And our core heart of the company is the patients and surgeons in hospitals. And we provide education and training to the surgeons. Like we provide online training, peer-to-peer training, and we have training centers. And we provide technical support and then field service support. So we have been in the market for 23 years, and we have completed around 5 million surgeries, and totally we have like 43K surgeons over the world, and we have 4,400 systems placed across the globe. So this is our system. Basically, like we have the patient cart, and there's a table will be laid down, and the patient will be there. There's arms will go into the patient's body, and the surgeon console will talk to the patient cart. So the surgeon operates the console, and then the arms move inside. And you can cut the tissue, remove the tissues, scaling, steeping, everything will happen. And the vision card is where like the surgeon and the other assistants can see what's going on, and the surgeon will be able to see within the console itself. So these are companies. And quick fact sheet on Neptune, like what we have around like 270 users so far, and we are trying to roll out 1,000 users in end of Q4, and we have users from like 10 different countries, and we have probably 40 Neptune apps spanned in like 7 key business groups like order to cash, customer service, and then we have finance, we have manufacturing, quality, and we have total like 15 Neptune developers, like both on-site and offshore, and it's very quick to learn. So our developers like within like 2-3 weeks they learn this technology. And we have been using Neptune for the last couple of years, and overall, like we experience like better user experience, and then high customer satisfaction, and also there's a productivity in the manufacturing everywhere because total number of clicks are saved. Like instead of like 30-40 clicks, we can build an application which will give them everything within 10-15 clicks. So overall, there's an increase in productivity as well. So regarding the mobile application, what we have built and why we have built, just a quick, simple business process here. So basically, our customers are hospitals, and once we sell the system, the what you saw in the front page, we sell the system, and they start using for surgeries. And while surgeries, there could be any issue with the system or instrument or whatever it is. So the hospital will call the customer care, and they will report the problem. And our customer support, they will listen to the problem, they will create a service request, and if they can fix it over the phone, they will close the call immediately and fix it by giving them the steps to troubleshoot and stuff. And if they cannot fix it, they will have to send a field service engineer to the hospital to solve the problem. So in that case, we will generate a field service order, and that has all the details of the problem and what customer reported and everything. And as soon as they create the field service order, we send a notification to the FE, and the field engineer gets a notification saying that what is the hospital, what is the customer problem, and who is the contact at the hospital. So first he will accept the field service order, and then he will talk to the contact and schedule an appointment to visit the hospital. And he will go there and do the repair work. Like if there is any bad part, he'll have to take the bad part out, and then he or she always carries the parts in the trunk, the car. So they go and install it in the customer side, and then they have to now record everything in CRM. Like SAP CRM is a solution, and then they will record everything, all the labor and travel and admin. And once they record everything in a field service order, they have to close the field service order, and then we send a complete notification to the customer also saying that what is the work that we have done. So this is a high-level business model, and now you know why we need a mobile application. So like all our engineers are spread across the world. They have to go to different hospitals every day and face the customer and then resolve the issues. So it's very difficult for them to carry their laptop and log into VPN and then connect to a SAP solution and then record the details. So then over the period of time, like they've shown interest in building a mobile application, and it's very intuitive and then easy to use on the go. So that is why we went and implemented a mobile application. And I'll allow my colleague to go through the features as well.
Yeah, before I go to the demo, I will quickly go through the features of mobile applications. So as like Arun said, for the business process, we need all these features required for the field engineer to perform from the starting the work order to the close of the work order. So this we have these kind of push notifications. So as soon as the as soon as the DV starts, the first level of customer support creates service order, it sends notifications to the FE. So that way, FE will be alerted. Okay, there is a service order created. You can take an action. So if it is there are different type of priorities. If it is high priority, it has to take an action immediately. So instead of logging into the web UI, like we have SAP web UI also, CRM web UI. So instead of opening the laptop and logging into the CRM web UI, you can quickly check on your mobile. Is it a high priority? You can take an action. You can call customer and then take an action, or you can go to the hospital fix the issue. So for that, we use some push notifications, and you can change the order status also. You can, based on the once the FD contacts the customer, you can change the order status. Okay, I contacted the customer. If the severity is less, you can schedule an appointment and then walk to the hospital. And this has the call features also. To call the customer, you can once you log into the mobile app, once you open the FSO, you can see the who from the hospital who you can contact, and then immediately call from the hospital. And then you can directions also. It has the inbuilt functionality. You can open the maps, and then how far is the customer in the car, and you can take directions from the app. And also you can record all his service items, like labor, travel, and admin hours. And also you can, whatever the part he exchanged, whatever the part in part out, he can record those items also. And he can attach so generally as per since our company is a regulated company, he needs to take a bad part, he needs to take a picture and attach on the work part. So we can, attachments also one of the features. Whatever issues he found on the customer side, he can record those notes. And and also it has the offline capability. So some of the hospitals, they don't have the Wi-Fi very weak signal. You can download the app before going to the hospital itself, and then you can perform all these actions in the customer side. And so other one is the use of the signature pad. So when we for the green field, when we install the system at the hospital, they need to take the signature from the customer and then send it to our contract stream, and then immediately the contract team has to approve it. Then only the villager can install the system at the hospital. So earlier we used to use this was a manual process. So if we used to take a printout and then send to the customer into contract stream, and then they need to review it and then send it back. That was almost a day process. So with this, it was very quick. Within 5 minutes, they can do they can verify and then send it back to the villager. And the fingerprint sign up. So since it's a regulated company, when work order is closed, he has to sign up. So from WebUI, he needs to input his user ID and password, and then only he can close the work order. But from here, he can close the work order using the fingerprint or the print pad application. So this company, we he can check his inventory also online. So how much inventory, how much each part of the parts he has that is separate. Like when he walks to the hospital, he will carry all his parts in front. That is his inventory. So if there is any bad part and if he has to return that to the due, so then he can create a return part from his mobile app itself. And also he can see his calendar also. So when before he go to the hospital, he will schedule an appointment, okay, when he can walk to the hospital. And then, so those kind of his calendar, the current day and then future past and all his schedule he can do in the mobile app itself. And notifications, like notifications or push notifications. I'll show you the demo. These are the quick slides. So this is the launchpad, mobile launchpad for the field engineer. So you can see all these, these are all different applications. The notification application, the resource planning, the calendar application, and the open access source are all work orders, whatever assigned to the field engineer. You can see all these open access application and complete access also. My bin is like an inventory where you can see all these inventory. So these are the slides for open letter sources. So this is kind of a master detail. If you read master detail in the master page, you can see all these open letter sources and then the detail pages. So when you click on the master record, it goes the detail pages, and then you can see all the access of the detail. What are the header level details and the item level details, nodes, admin items. Yeah, this is parts detail and contract details and attachments. And these are the notification applications where you can see all these assigned resource. You can view from the notification. You can open the field service order from the notification itself. And this is the calendar view where you can check the audience schedules. And this is the inventory, private application, the inventory where you can see all the parts.
Anybody has connected for iPhone connected to USB? I think it.
Like a charger cable or?
Not sure if the cable is 40 or.
Okay.
So just an iPhone.
iPhone cable, yeah.
You want this?
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey.
If he get some initial login, so he has to sign in with the his user ID password, and then once after he signs, after the onboarding process is done, he can quickly log in with your fingerprint and then printer. So these are all the applications. So notifications, he can see all his notifications, whatever is the work order assigned. And with the resource planner, he can view, he can see all his appointments. So on 28th is so scheduled. Open FSOs, you can see all his work orders, open work orders. So from the detail, he can change the work order status. He can put the work order in progress, or he can close the work order, or he can put the work order on hold also. From here, he can see all the directions of the customer using any of the maps, and he can call the customer also to schedule an appointment to hospital. And he can reassign the FSO to the different FP. So from here, he can search all the FPs in the system and then assign to different FP. Then in the work items, he can see all the items, and then from the template, he can add all the service items. He can also table, also power. This is a great advantage for the FE. So earlier, before this app, he used to write down all the parts, which part is exchanging, and then which part is installing and then removing from the system. Now with this app, he can just walk into the hospital and then he can scan the part using the barcode scanner. Then whatever is he is going to install from his truck, he can scan that part also. That part he's going to install. He can scan that part. The cards, you can see all his. So like I said, the system has a PSC, DSC, like you can see all his cards, and also you can see all the contracts at the customer side. You can see, you can add the nodes, and you can attach you can do the attachments also. You can take a picture, or you can, from the library also, you can attach. And you can create the code also from here. If the customer is needed to create a code, you can create the code. And whatever is the backend system is SAP CRM. So if there are any errors from at the order level, you can see here and then fix it. And the field activity report also you can view from here. What are the margins are, what is the contract type and all. It's the field activity report. And from my bin, he can view all the inventory. And then from here, he can create the return order, return work order. You can choose the excess RMA, excess, if you have the excess inventory, you can return that to the financial cycle.
So basically, like given the demo, so you guys know there's intensity in these developments, and so I just want to summarize on what the tune offers, basically like how it helps us. So what you have showed is only 20% of what we have built, and like tons of process variations and dynamic statuses and dynamic order types, and the screen changes based on that, and a lot of error handling. So overall, like we have completed this mobile application with 6 months development time, and only 2 developers were there from the beginning to end. So it's a low-cost development. It's good for the management actually, justified budget, and quick delivery of the apps. And we have excellent technical support from the Q team. So we used to bring Niall, the CTO, as and when we want, and they help with all the technical questions. And there are a lot of out of functionality features they deliver, like the integration for push notifications, push push. In fact, they give code snippets on how to invoke them, writing a ABAP code. And the barcode scanner, we don't have to write any code for that, and like invoking maps or other plugins. And even offline, it comes with some standard basic functionality, and then we just need to customize on top of it. But the framework is already built in Neptune, which we can utilize. And things like attachments, they already have delivered the app. We can just use it in our application and utilize it. And things like fingerprint authentication is a kind of a big deal for our filling case. They don't want to enter their 20-digit password, 12-digit password. They want just sign up based on our fingerprint. And even the signature pad to get a signature from the customers, those kind of things, Neptune like delivers out of the box. And even the phone gap bill, they support that. So overall, like we are very pleased with this tool, and we are continuing to invest and develop more and more apps. If you have any questions, please let us.
Do we have any questions? Question time. Go ahead.
Did you guys perform any updates or like upgrades to the system after this implementation?
Yes. So update essentially upgrade the functionality of the OS version of
The version of the Neptune or the SAP system, like did you do an upgrade?
We did that upgrade. First we went with the SP3, and then Neptune released SP4 also. So we went live with SP3, and then after SP4, it has a backward compatibility.
And then like even the app also, we are like trying to figure out auto update. So whenever the OS releases a new version or something like that, it supports.
Okay, any other questions? No? Well, big hand to that. It's probably
Thank you.
Next time, next speaker up, all the way from Redwood City today. Yeah. Yesterday from Australia. SAP screen personas ways. So I was Talking about the thing is interesting. Everybody? Big hand, a silent hand.
Okay. So we have lunch. Hopefully everyone's still awake. Can anyone hear me okay? Let me just speak louder. So that, all good? Louder? Louder? Yes, yes. All right, I'll try to speak really loud. So thanks, Simon. Thanks for the introduction. My name's Simon Kemp, another Simon. I'm the UX lead at Cloud IT in Australia. And I'm also an SAP mentor. Actually, not that many SAP mentors left anymore. We seem to be not that many here used to do one. So what this session is all about, so this is the same session I'm going to give a tech ed next week. We're going to try to condense it down to 20 minutes from sort of a 40-minute session. So some of it I'll just skip through, but like Simon said, SAP Screen Personas, I wanted to show you how you can use it in three different ways, essentially. So just some crowd participation to start with. Who knows what SAP Screen Personas? Have you heard of SAP Screen Personas? Show us. No. So not that many people have actually heard of it. Those people who have heard of it, have you used it like in anger? Have you actually built some flavors with personas? No, yeah. Okay, and did you use the web version or the web version? Did you use the Windows version? So the Windows version? No, just use the web. And did you do any mobile stuff with it? So hopefully, you guys can take something away. So from a technology point of view, just to give you some background, this is, I guess, a relatively recent release. This is the system we use. But again, it's not HANA, so there's no HANA here. So you can take personas, it's an add-on to your web app system, and you can use it all the way back to NetWeaver 7, NetWeaver 7.0 system. You don't have to be on the latest and greatest. The background to this piece of work, this was for a large Australian mining company, and the business process we're looking at here is really around plant maintenance. So they use SAP, they use the plant maintenance module in SAP. Plant maintenance essentially is all about fixing parts of the plant that get broken. So you guys talked about field service, people going out and fixing stuff. The scenario here is actually mainly around the identification of problems in the plant. So there's a broken fan, or there's a broken engine, or something needs replacing, and how do they create these notifications, which then flow into work orders. So essentially, there were a few drivers for the companies. They wanted more efficiency in the system. They wanted to make sure people followed the business process. So one of the key things for them was to make sure people were picking the right bits of equipment to create the notifications again. And they wanted to bring more people into the system and have less stuff being done off the system. And they wanted to try to use the right tools in the right situation. So I'm going to fly through this bit. This bit's really important when you're doing a project like this because you really want to understand the users, how they use the system, how they think about the system, what sort of environment they work in. And we ran a whole sort of user research, user experience design piece with this customer to kind of understand that, build up a persona. So the same word persona, but in this case, it's kind of like who are the people, what do they need, what are their pain points, what goals do they have, etc. So we did that. I'm not going to go through that here because it's going to take too long. But if you want to know more about that, it'll be in the slides and my tech ed session. What we ended up developing were essentially with SAP Screen Personas, what you start with is the SAP GUI screen. And you sort of take that screen and you say, well, those screens are complex. Right? They've got lots of fields on them. They have lots of tabs. People spend a lot of time going through the tabs, the fields that they need to fill in. And a lot of the time, 90% of what's on the screen is not needed. It's there because some customer somewhere in some region, some industry needs to have that field there. But a lot of the time, you can get rid of a lot of that stuff. So with personas, what you do is you create essentially what's called a flavor on top of the screen. And you can create multiple flavors. So you might have a flavor for one particular set of users, and they only need a subset of subset of the fields on the screen. And you can have another flavor for a different set of users who might need a bit more or something a bit different. So we came up, I think we've had a dozen flavors here for all these different transactions. And the sort of common thing you do is you hide fields and you can script. So you can, if there are repetitive steps, if someone has to click here and then do this and do that, you can actually script those steps so you can reduce the amount of clicks people have to take. We did some scripting around attachments. So if you've ever attached a document in the SAP GUI that's in the pane, but it goes like we did some scripting around attachments. Providing people values, reorganizing the screen so it made sense. So instead of having to go through multiple tabs to find the fields you need to fill in, you can take those fields and pull them all out, put them in the order, and get rid of all those tabs and like everything else works. So let me see if I can show you a quick demo. I'm going to try to show you the same process, just in the three different. So I checked it out and figured the demo goal would get into there. So I've just got videos for you. Plus, I think it saves a lot of time because you don't see me logging in. And so let me just show you what's up here. Go on. So this is in the web. This is the web version in the browser. Essentially, what we've done is we've given these users a launchpad to get started with. So these buttons on this screen are the main things that they do. And the scenario we're going to follow is the creation of the notification. So they can come in and create a notification. We simplified this screen down to just the fields that they need. That's the standard screen there. There's a lot more fields on it. Basically, the first step is to find the piece of equipment that they want to report as being faulty or malfunctioning. And so generally that's what they call the functional location. They're searching for it. They're going to find, choose one here. They're choosing that photo loop system down the bottom, and then they're going to create a notification of a particular type. You put in a title for it, choose a priority, say who reported it, and that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all the information they need. They can put in more detailed description. They have to do a few little confirmations, but essentially then they can immediately go and create the order. So that I'll show you what the original screen of that looks like, but there's a lot more stuff on that screen originally. So then they come into the order, and it's probably just worth talking about this a little bit. So on this screen, this whole status section that you can see here in the middle, setting the status in work order, usually you have to come up here, click on this little button, and then it gives you a pop-up, and then you have to go through choosing the status. If you wanted to make it easier for them to see which status was already selected, and it's easier for them to choose the status that they want to set. We just changed that into a set of buttons. Click on them, you can actually see it updating. So through the scripting in the backend, it updates the state of that work order. I think the next bit of this demo is going to show the attachments. Yeah, so at the moment there's no attachments. So that's another thing we brought in. You can see the little sort of count. If you're used to using a mobile phone, you'll see how many emails you've got, that little count. There's no way to see in standard SAP screen whether there are any attachments against work order. So we brought that kind of to the front. So you can quickly create an attachment, and you can see the attachment points. It's up there. So let me quickly go back here. So kind of just to show, so this is the standard screen. That's the kind of the start screen in SAP when you go in. And this was the screen that we developed using Persona. So we got rid of a lot of the stuff. Got like sort of before and after shot. Kind of see. We got rid of a lot of the stuff at the top, the menus and stuff that they don't use, a lot of the buttons that aren't needed. It's a lot of stuff that distracts the user, right? We also provided this this kind of launch pad. We've hidden some of the menu and personalized those links. And that's the standard notification creation screen. There's lots of tabs, and the fields that you have to fill in are like all over the place. They start up here, then you've got to go down here, then you've got to go down there. That was the screen afterwards. Nice and logical. They could just tab through the fields they needed to fill in. Got rid of a lot of stuff, and put some scripts in behind as well. It's the same for the edit notification. Show you that screen, but that's similar. And this was the work order screen before, and you can see that, for example, it has the status. My mouse in the middle of the status of before shop. Then afterwards, we have the status section kind of more highlighted, and the attachments button at the top. So before we did the attachments, you had to go to the top, create attachment, and choose what you wanted to create against. Afterwards, it was just that little button with the count, single click, attach your documents. Okay, so the next way to use personas. So we've seen it used in the browser and the web. One of the features that this is only about a year old now is the ability to do the same thing, but to do it with the Windows GUI. So most, so you might say, well, why do you want to use Windows GUI? In my experience, most SAP customers, to a large degree, still use the Windows GUI. Most of the customers I go to, sort of hardcore SAP users, are still using SAP GUI on a Windows. So that's why you want to do it. One of the problems with personas from the web version is if you have people using the Windows GUI and you say, oh, we're going to do these great personas flavors, but they're only available on the web, then they've got to do some stuff in Windows, and then they've got to do other stuff in the web, and there's kind of this two sort of separates their worlds for them. Right? It's a bit confusing. So if you can get everything done in the Windows GUI, that's really good. Getting our flavors, so those flavors that I showed you, getting those flavors to work on the Windows GUI was a bit frustrating, but it was maybe more politically correct to say it was challenging to get to work. Right? We lost a lot of air. There are known restrictions with the Windows GUI, so there's some things you can do in the browser that you can't do in the Windows GUI. And a lot of it's related to, for example, the JavaScript engine that's used. In the browser, you're on a latest JavaScript engine. And in the Windows GUI, you're locked down to a version of JavaScript that is available within the Microsoft environment, 10 years ago, whatever it was. So there's definitely some restrictions. If you're thinking about using the Windows GUI and stream personas, check out that note. It tells you everything that you can and can't do essentially. So what are some of the challenges we faced? The GUI crashed a lot, put it that way. We ended up raising, I think when I originally did this presentation, we raised 14 support incidents that were related to the GUI crashing and things not working the right way. We're up to about 20 now. But SAP are working through this. The challenge with the Windows GUI is that Windows GUI is owned by a different organization or a different group within SAP than Personas is. So Personas team can be quite quick, can release notes, can release patches. The Windows GUI team is sort of strictly every quarter they'll bring out a new release of the Windows GUI. So if you're too late in that cycle and you report something to them too late, then you might have to wait until not the next release, but maybe the release after that to get it fixed. So that can be challenging too. Debugging is very interesting in the Windows GUI. I literally had to go back to writing out, lines of, I'm here, this is the value of this parameter, and then you can go and look in the logs of the Windows GUI and work out how far through your code it's gotten, and try to work out what's going on. That is also challenging. And like I said, most of the time, the solutions to these problems were a hot fix or the next release of the Windows GUI. So, key takeaway: if you want to do Windows GUI, get yourself on the latest edition of the Windows GUI. That can be a big challenge sometimes if you have to roll that out to a lot of people. Okay, so let me show you the same thing working in the Windows GUI. Right, so this is the same thing, but now in the Windows GUI. So it looks pretty much the same. There's some slight differences. I don't think I'll run through all of it. But essentially, you get the same result at the end of the day. What I might do is just fly onto the mobile. So we've done two different ways to, I guess, consume your flavors. Right, you've got browser, you've got Windows GUI. Again, Windows GUI, a lot of people still use it. But the most recent sort of innovation, I guess, in the persona space is their mobile rendering engine, which is based on SAP UI5. And they call that the Slipstream engine. So what the Slipstream engine essentially is a UI5 application that looks at your GUI screens and translates those GUI screens from DIN Pro type GUI screens into UI5 controls. And there's something that does sort of automatically, right? So when you switch on the Slipstream engine, or when you access your screen using Slipstream engine, some things automatically change to better suit the mobile device. So for example, instead of scrolling in tables, so instead of having a table that you scroll through, you might see in the GUI, that scrolling behavior is actually changed to a paging behavior. So you'll get like 20 rows, and then it'll be like, go to the next 20, like that. A lot of the buttons are kind of relocated to match the S/4HANA Fiori design guidelines. So the back button goes up the top left, and the save button and the action buttons are down on the bottom right, that sort of thing. Icons are replaced with text. The OK code field, you can type the transaction code in, that gets relocated. So I'll show you kind of what that looks like a little bit. So this is the web GUI work order screen. It's the same screen, but using the Slipstream engine. So the header gets shrunk down. So if you look at the original screen, you've kind of got a menu bar, and you've got a set of buttons, you've got a title, and you've got another set of buttons. That all gets sort of squashed into just the title bar, and then some sort of action buttons up the top. You see, there's no more icons in that menu. It all changes to text, which has its limitations. The whole thing gets a bit wider for some reason. You'll see like the buttons like save and cancel that are down the bottom, they automatically move. So if you go back to the original screen, like the save button's up the top, the red X is up the top, and the cancel, all that stuff automatically gets moved to the exit button as well. And the back button is over on the left hand side. Okay, so from a kind of realization of benefits, these are the sort of numbers we're seeing from an efficiency point of view. So if you look at creating a notification, in the standard Win GUI, it's taking, say, 41 seconds for someone to create a notification. Using the flavor in the Win GUI, you kind of have that to about 21 seconds. So if you want, you can do some maths around that. They were raising about 1,000 notifications a week. So it's a just over 6 hour savings in people's time to actually do this thing. Let me show you this demo, and then I'll wrap it up. So when you start the Slipstream engine, it's renders particularly for a mobile device. You can design your screens to be more mobile friendly, so in this case, just bigger buttons, easy to tap. And then again, it kind of looks like a UI5 application. So I'm just following the same process as before, and filling in giving a title. Now I have to choose a functional location like I did before. I'm just going to do a search for a particular building. And here you'll see on this next screen, you'll see where the search results come up to the paging down the bottom. That's something else that I was talking about. It's not a scroll, it's like a page by page view. So the Slipstream engine is doing all this essentially for you. And you just continue through and fill the rest of that in. Um, Again, you have the attachments. So the attachments functionality also changes. So here I'm just attaching a photo. And a video photo. But this whole sort of upload dialog is all something again that the substream engine is bringing to you. You got the attachment and the attachment count down the bottom. And you go and you save your notification. And on this next demo, we just kind of a little bit of a proof of concept at the moment, but we wanted to see if we could maybe use something like an optical character recognition, like OCR, to help people find a functional location. So a lot of the time, the functional location number is written either on a piece of paper or on a sticker, like next to the piece of equipment. We wanted people to be able to scan that. So we saw before scanning a barcode. This is similar, but in this case, I'm going to take a photo. And the photo, in this case, is just a picture or a photo of the actual functional location ID. And this at the moment then is applying an OCR library to try to work out what that says. Right, once it's done that, it just takes the value that it's worked out and puts it back in the functional location. So there were two ways I tried doing that. One was to use the OCR service on the cloud platform. That worked pretty well. It did have some issues with like cross-site stuff and different domains. You can get through that. But the other way is there's actually a JavaScript library that you can download and do it locally. So that's what it's shown. And then yeah, you create a notification. So we just wrap that up. So now hopefully I've shown you how you can use personas in 3 different ways, right? So on the browser, which is kind of what it's been like from the beginning, with the Windows GUI, and also on mobile devices. Key takeaways, personas can be used all the way back to NetWeaver 7.0. You don't have to be on HANA. You can, it actually is used extensively in S4HANA. So it's one of the tools that SAP is using because they've got so many transactions and they need to make everything Fiori. They're not going to build custom Fiori applications for everything. So they're using personas as a way of kind of Fiori-izing traditional GUI screens. And it's free. So if you've got a NetWeaver license, you've got a license to use personas, including the substream engine. And one of the things I really like about it is non-destructive. So you start with the standard SAP screen, and then you take stuff away, you add some scripting, but essentially that you can always go back to that original screen. You don't break anything. So if someone's using a flavor and it's not working or something missing, they can always flip back to the original SAP screen. It's always there. You don't break anything. It's a lot quicker to develop a flavor than it is to develop a custom Fiori app. I'd say rule of thumb, for the standard Fiori app, you're looking at least 4 weeks work, right? At least. By the time you build the front end, by the time you build your OData services, they don't already exist, etc. You can build a flavor in a few hours. Realistically, give yourself a couple of days to get stuff right and test it, and then you can roll it out. So it's super fast. And the latest version includes the substream engine, which again is something that's a bit of a work in progress, but it's definitely getting there. If you're more information on those links, one thing I want to show you is that just the other day on OpenSAP, there's this building mobile applications with screen personas. So this is the 3rd OpenSAP course they've done for personas. And this one is all about slipstream engine and mobile applications. So if you're interested in that, take a look at this course. If you're at TechEd next week, I know there's a lot of hands-on sessions. I'm helping out one of them, where you can learn how to build mobile apps using slipstream. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, do you have any questions? Questions? Oh,
What can I ask you about?
Make sure it's a hard one. You showed the
flavors that we're creating for each transaction.
Yeah.
And you just had, I think, one flavor for each transaction, but would there be some circumstances in which you'd have more than one flavor for each
Yeah,
transaction?
you could. So the flavors that we did. This is the flavors. It's really, it was per transaction, but we're really focusing on supervisors. So that was the persona, if you like, or the role within the organization that we were targeting. So all these flavors are supervisor flavors. So we have plans to do a set of flavors for the actual technicians who work on them. And they'd probably be different. They probably wouldn't have quite as much information, or they have different. So yeah, absolutely, you can have different flavors for the same transaction. And actually, one of the nice things as well is a lot of these screens and a lot of these transactions use the same screens. You might go into the create notification transaction, right? Or the display or change notification. Different transactions, but when you actually get into the transaction, the underlying screen is the same, right? It's the same layout. So rather than have to go and create different flavors for each of those three, so for create, for change and display, you can actually tell personas that okay, this is a different transaction code, but apply the same changes that I made that were relevant to this other screen, and it does that. So it saves you a lot of time not having to do the same thing. Anybody else?
So if you create a persona for a Windows GUI, like does it get automatically converted to music in the web GUI, or like we need to do separately?
No, it does. So what we did, we started with the web GUI. We got stuff working in the web GUI, and then in theory, you should just be able to take that. And okay, there are known restrictions. So, but apart from the known restrictions, you should just be able to take that flavor and open your Windows GUI and say, yeah, I want to use that flavor, and it should work exactly the same way, except for some of the restrictions that are known. What we found, though, was that was the theory, and the practice was quite different. We found stuff that should have worked, because the note said it would work, or it didn't say it wouldn't work in the note. But when we actually went to do it, we found, yeah, essentially there were bugs in the system. We raised them with SAP and we got them fixed, but it did take a bit of time. But yes, you should be able to just develop a flavor and run it on any sort of different browser or Windows or.
Does the Slipstream engine like cache those transactions in a UI5 edition, or does it do it on the fly? Like translate the info over to UI5?
I don't know, to be honest. It's probably a question for the product team.
And does it take into account any flavors you've already built on that transaction?
Yes, so you can go in and you can see all the flavors that you've already built.
Okay, you know, automatically translate it to
Yep.
Slipstream.
Yeah. And again, in theory, it should just be, you just use Slipstream and you use your same flavors. But again, the reality is some stuff, like I'll give you an example, I had a drop-down list that had more than 100 entries in it. You might say, oh, that's a lot for a drop-down list, and I agree, but in the web version, it allowed you to have more than 100. When I ran it in Slipstream the other day, I'm like, where are the rest of my entries? It only went to 100. So I'd raise an incident going, hang on, why did it only do 100? So the things like that, it's like,
All right, thank you so much, Simon.
no worries.
We'll switch up computers. Then we have Kevin Nelson from Google joining us. A big hand to Kevin. Thank you very much. Just a second to get set up here.
love when a good plan comes together. So thanks for coming out. My name is Kevin Nelson. I'm a developer advocate at Google, on the Google Cloud team. I'm going to talk briefly about what Google Cloud is, why you might want to deploy SAP apps on Google, and a little bit about how to go about that. And then I'm going to dive a little deeper into one product called BigQuery that a lot of SAP customers are finding as a nice combination with their existing SAP apps. So to start, though, I'm going to go back to the very beginning of Google. This is Google's mission statement: to organize the world of information and make it universally accessible and useful. To fulfill that mission, we've created a handful of products that you may have heard of, things like Gmail and Google Maps. We're about to have an 8th product on here with more than 1 billion users. Google Drive's going to pass that probably before the end of the year. In order to keep these apps, develop the apps, deploy them, keep them updated, scale them around the world, and keep everybody safe and secure, we've developed some processes and techniques that allow us to do that. We learned a lot about software, a lot about DevOps, and we've now deployed that out for others to be able to leverage Google's innovation for solving their business problems. So just again, there's a little brief part about Google Cloud here. Google Cloud is it's a public cloud provider along the lines of AWS or Azure if you're using any of those. We have data centers all over the world. In most of those locations you see up there, we have at least 3 zones, meaning you have complete failover protection within any given region. So there's multiple fiber access points, there's multiple power providers, so it protects against a wide range of things that could possibly happen. On top of that, all those data centers are connected by the world's largest private network. So Google has deployed their own fiber, under ocean fiber around the world, and connects also with more than 100 points of presence where you can connect directly to Google's network, or in more than 1,000 points of presence where your customers or you can connect in for access to that data. So this is a great feature because no matter where your data resides or where your customers are, they're going to connect to Google's network at their closest location. And then from there, they're completely off the public internet, and that data is transported over Google's private network. So it gives you benefits in speed as well as security along the way there. So anybody using Google Cloud Platform today? All right, always, all right, thank you, Lucia in the back. How about other cloud providers? Are other people deploying things in the cloud as well? Okay, a few others. So how many people are thinking of deploying some apps in the cloud? Okay, a few more. So that's good. We're going to talk a little more about why you might want to do this and some ways you might want to start. You'll be able to dip your toes into this. So the question I always get asked about being on the public cloud is about security. And the key to how Google approaches security is to trust absolutely nothing and nobody. The traditional way of thinking about security is with firewalls and things like that. You build a wall and a moat around your data center in your office. Anything inside inside that wall is considered secure. Everything outside is considered evil. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work in the world today. There are multiple attack vectors at every single stage along the way. A common attack vector today is users, executives getting phished. So once someone can provide information about security inside the network, then everything inside the network is compromised. On down, there's ways for SQL injection, HTTP injection, so apps get compromised, and all the way down to the hardware. So Google has probably the most robust security team in the world, and a whole slew, hundreds of security researchers. And many of the vulnerabilities that get reported were first discovered by Google security researchers. including most recently things like Spectre and Meltdown, which were actually hardware vulnerabilities, in almost every Intel Core chip. Everything based on the 8086 architecture. So Google does a lot of things to protect even at that level. Google uses custom-built hardware, custom-built servers, and every single server, for instance, in the Google Cloud has a custom security chip in it called Titan. So we make sure that the kernels getting loaded are verified and secured. We want to know everything about every bit, every process going on anywhere within the network. So Google Cloud has a whole range of services, things that, if you're on any other cloud provider, you're looking at them, things you're going to be familiar with. Compute engine. Oh, that doesn't work at all on that screen. Look at that. That light just disappeared. That's awesome. The compute engine is Google's way of running virtual machines. You have a wide variety of shapes and sizes of those. App Engine is Google's original serverless architecture for doing microservice-based applications. Kubernetes Engine is a managed Kubernetes service for deploying and managing containers in the cloud. Going across the right, we have Cloud Storage is for storing files. We have a couple of NoSQL databases, Cloud BigTable and Firestore. A couple of SQL databases, Cloud SQL and Cloud Spanner. Spanner is kind of unique in that it can be deployed around the world and guarantees transactions no matter where they're coming in. It uses atomic clocks at each location to precisely timestamp every single transaction to guarantee consistency. Wide variety of networking options. I'm not going to go through them all, but VPNs, load balancers, all the things you would expect. All sorts of big data tools. We're going to spend a little more time talking about BigQuery at the end of the talk. We also have Dataflow, which is based on Apache Beam. Dataproc is managed to Hadoop and Spark. Whole series of machine learning tools from pre-built models up through running managed TensorFlow models. If you're doing, you're going to build your own models to run yourself. And then running management developer tool, Stackdriver is kind of an interesting tool. It's a monitoring, debugging, tracing tool for managing cloud apps, and it works across cloud providers. It's not strictly limited to Google. So there's a whole range of ways to run your code on Google Cloud, from all the way highly customizable all the way to fully managed. At the highly customizable end, you have Compute Engine, where you're running your app on standard VMs. This is how you're going to deploy HANA, for instance. You're going to run that in a virtual machine on the cloud. On the far end, on this side, Cloud Functions is similar to Lambda functions on AWS, if you're familiar with that. It's completely serverless. You write the code, you define triggers, and these things get called automatically. You don't worry about scaling, infrastructure, anything at all. On the bottom, GCP Marketplace is a way for automatically installing predefined third-party apps on your virtual machine. And then we have ways of building and registering the containers on there. Okay, so that's kind of the boring background on GCP. We've been, we're very proud that just in the 18 months since the SAP partnership's been announced, that we have developed and released a lot of different services that are available for SAP customers. So you can run a whole suite of business services on top of whatever database you like. You can run it on, on HANA, of course, but also SQL Server, DB2, and various flavors of Linux and Windows Server for running national machines. We have a huge range of shapes of virtual machines that you can run. And these are available for scale up and out configuration. So you can have multiple machines running horizontally or make single monolithic machines with up to up to 160 cores and almost 4 terabytes of RAM. We've been on a progression since we started back in March. You see now we're at the 4 terabyte range. We've announced that you'll be able to run 20 terabyte HANA instances on bare metal inside Google Cloud, and we have managed services going up to 18 terabytes planned over the coming year. And there's lots of ways you may want to consider beginning to move on to a cloud provider, whether it's Google or not. There are, of course, the standard lift and shift migrations. There are third-party partners that will help you with that, where you're going to bring your entire landscape over and can build a virtual machine, get it configured, and run that in the cloud, just like you run it in your own data center today. But that's a big ask of an IT department to make that kind of a change on what to them is going to be an unproven provider. So there are some easier ways to get going. If you think about you running disaster recovery in the cloud, you can set up your instances in the cloud, and you're only paying for the services that you use. So you don't need to have an entire additional machine large enough to run your entire operation and have that running all the time and have to maintain it and have the data center and everything else. You can set that up in the cloud for when something does happen. You can spin it up and only pay for it when you're actually using it. And then one of the great ways we're seeing right now, which I'm most excited about, is being able to run dev and test environments. One of the awesome things you can do in the cloud is you can spin up a new instance of HANA Express, for instance, in 5 minutes. So you can set up individual developer environments and spin those things up and down, and you're only paying for them when you use them. So if you have developers in the US, spin it up 8 to 5 and turn that thing off at the end of the day. Developers in Europe or in Asia, you spin it up when they want it, and you spin them back down so everybody can get their own environment. And then you can build these things out. You want to do test and qual, you want to run things on a regular basis. You only need to configure that machine for the load you're going to expect, and again, be able to turn it off whenever you want. So the reason I'm here and the reason I got excited about working with SAP is because there is, across the organization, there is support, strong support for what we're doing together. So Bernd and Diane Green, from CEO of Google Cloud, speak a lot together. And for two large organizations, it's critical to have that kind of executive support to make sure you get the resources you need and things stay on track. So I'm excited about this. It makes me confident that we're going to continue to get the resources and keep making this better and better over time. And that's led to some great customer success stories, companies like Home Depot and Colgate. And there's lots more in the pipeline, and we'll keep hearing more successes quickly over time. Excuse me. I was in Poland last week and managed to pick up a cold, so my voice is still a little bit crackly from that. So much of the infrastructure that runs the internet today has roots going back to papers published by Google. Things like MapReduce for doing these massive sharded applications of data, on through Fluent and Wheel and on TensorFlow and Kubernetes. So all of those have become products on Google Cloud, and there are often open source versions of these available as well. In the Apache project, there are a lot of their stuff is based on these original Google papers. I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking about one of these, BigQuery. So anybody heard of BigQuery? Okay, a couple people. So BigQuery is Google's completely serverless data warehouse. You can upload data into BigQuery and using standard SQL, be able to pull results out of that. The BigQuery architecture is kind of interesting. When I used to be product manager for the back end of Google Drive. And Google Drive stores a couple of files for people around the world. And when I first joined, I was trying to understand how files get shared. And I wanted to build up some stats on how often things are shared with more than one person and how many across an organization. When I was talking with one of the other product managers about this, we said, just go use Dremel and just run the queries. Like, what are you talking about? We're talking about 9 exabytes of data. I can't just go in a query. I'll come back next month. He says, oh, no, you can go do that he'll have results in like 5 or 10 minutes. And sure enough, that was available. And the same capability, what we call Dremel Inside, is called BigQuery as our cloud service. So BigQuery is interesting. You have this replicated storage. It is replicated across multiple data centers, and you have this massive set of machines running through the compute aspect of the query. And in between those, you have a petabit scale network. So what that means is you can have 100,000 machines, each talking to another machine at 10 gigabytes per second. So what that effectively does is make the shuffle aspect of a MapReduce almost instantaneous. And the other interesting thing about BigQuery, you think about normal data warehouse, you upload data, you run a batch process, you then run a query against it, and it's kind of static data. With BigQuery, you can of course upload the data in a batch as you like, but you also have this streaming capability. So you can be continuously streaming data into BigQuery, and that data is available for queries within a couple of seconds. So you can run these things and have real-time looks at your data continuously. It's completely standard SQL for doing that, and there's web UI, command line interface, and libraries in 7 languages for you to be able to get at this and integrate it into your apps. So part of what makes BigQuery magic is how it stores the data. Traditional relational database stores things by row. So you have one record of information stored, and then you have multiple records. BigQuery takes that and cuts it sideways. Each column is stored together, and by knowing the format of that data, it can compress each of those columns in the most optimal possible way. So when you're running a query on 5 or 10 columns out of a table that might have hundreds of thousands of columns, you're only looking at that portion of the data. So you're looking at less data, which allows things to be processed more quickly. Then, because the data is sharded across multiple instances, you can have multiple compute engines hitting that data simultaneously, building up the data for the results of the query. And with thousands of machines available, the BigQuery mapper figures out the optimal architecture to be able to hit each of those shards to produce the data in the fastest possible way. And the number of shards that can be, it can scale up to hundreds or thousands of machines almost instantly, depending on the size of the query. And you don't have to know anything about that. You just submit your query, and BigQuery figures all that out. And another cool thing about this is, if you have that, the compute instance of BigQuery is called a slot, and you can reserve slots for your team or for your company, and they get deployed in the optimal possible way across all the different people that are hitting your data. Once you upload data into BigQuery, you're paying 2 cents a gigabyte per month. But if you haven't edited one of your tables in more than 90 days, the price automatically drops in half to a penny. Latency is just as fast. The data is still sitting there. You can run queries against it all day long, and the data sits out there at a penny a gigabyte a month. And you can also split these tables, partition them by a variety of mechanisms. The most obvious way is by time. So a classic thing that companies do is you look at financial data by quarter. So you can set up these partitions and have Q1 data in one partition, Q2 data in another partition. And this is all been done automatically. You can set up a partition based just on a date field, for instance. So it automatically gets dropped into a partition. And that the point where the data price drops after 90 days is at the partition level. So once you have data 90 days out in one partition, if you're no longer changing that data, say for Q2 data this year, price automatically drops. That's really what Matt was talking about there. And there are some awesome tools for being able to get looks at this data. I mentioned that there's APIs available, and along with some inside Google products like Data Studio, which is a phenomenal data visualization tool. It's also available for third-party products like Tableau. Data Studio is kind of cool because it keeps a live connection to the data. So you can, for instance, you can embed a Data Studio visualization in a web page or in a document, and whenever you view it, it's automatically updated with the latest data. So this is a great way to expose information internally and potentially out to customers. So why do you care about this? I mentioned it's serverless. You can go, you can scale. You can put petabytes of data out there. You can analyze petabytes of data in minutes. You're only paying for the resources you use. If you currently have instances where you're running your own machines on site, you have to pay for the power. You have to pay for the machine. All that stuff, you're paying for it all the time. By only utilizing the resources that you're going to need when you want to access the data, you're going to save some money. We've also, because of the tight integration between Google and SAP, we've built some nice connectors to make it easy to access BigQuery data from inside SAP HANA. And the last thing that's kind of fun is that BigQuery also has huge amounts of public data sets that are available for query by anybody. So there's a NOAA weather database, for instance. So it has weather data for every spot around the world continuously updated. And that might be interesting, say, for a retailer. They see that last year's sales were 25% below what they are now. You might be super excited about that, but then you look like, oh, it was snowing last year. So you can integrate census data for demographics, weather data for things like that. NCAA basketball data, depending on what else you want to look at. So go check out the public data sets. There's a lot of fun stuff out there, and some of it is useful for integrating into enterprise applications. So just quickly, guys, want to kind of show you what Google Cloud Console looks like. It's just it's a web interface. You have a variety of cards. You can configure those cards depending on what you want to look at. And in order to connect HANA to BigQuery, there's a couple of simple steps you have to go through. You have to download and install ODBC drivers, standard ODBC drivers. If you want to get BigQuery drivers, we contracted with Simba to provide the BigQuery drivers. And then you go into the Google Cloud Console and you create a service account. Service accounts are used for providing identity for the service that you want to connect. To that, after you create the project, you get a project ID, and you need to put that back into the odbc.ini file to provide the connection. Then you set up a template database for smart data access, and we put together primarily Lucia in the back is the resident expert in this. We have a code lab. You can go through and you can try this yourself. So you can go through and you can set up a database, set up a HANA instance, set up BigQuery, connect them to, and do some queries from there. You can set up the new remote source in HANA. You add the virtual table. And now you can connect hot data still living within HANA and cold data that you have offloaded off to BigQuery. So you can take last year's data or 2 years ago data that you no longer want to keep live in the in-memory database and push it off to BigQuery. The key thing though with this is you got to be really careful to let BigQuery do what it's good at and have it return the summarized results back into HANA. You don't want to get a billion rows dropped into your HANA database from BigQuery. So you can check this all by reviewing the Smart Data Access log. You see here a single row is being returned, thumbs up, and if you've got all the rows that you're looking at, that's probably not what you want. In this instance, with 200 rows, probably not going to matter, but if you've got a billion rows or more, it's almost certainly not what you want to do. And you can also look at the visualized plan to make sure that things are doing what you expect. So in this case, both the hot and cold data are returning a single row, and then gets aggregated and reported to your application, which is exactly what you want. And with that, I am done and am happy to take any questions.
This is your chance, guys.
Go for it.
Kevin, you did mention Cloud Platform on Cloud Foundry. I think it's live, isn't it, in one region on Google Cloud? So should we expect to see a lot more regions have that offering as well?
Definitely. Yeah, you can expect them in every continent, obviously in North America, in Europe, also in Asia. Absolutely.
Good questions. Anyone? Any questions?
No? Okay.
Okay, thanks, folks.
Now from Apple, talk about the SAP iOS SDK.
Thank you.
So,